Well, good morning. It's such a privilege for me to be with you this morning. I am a former colleague of Jules and of Father Justin's and of Allison Grusecki's. And because I study the OT for a living, I thought I should probably preach on the OT for you all this morning, the OT lesson. And part of the reason I love to study and to talk and even to preach about the Old Testament is because it has such great stories. And this morning is, of course, no exception to that. This passage from 2 Samuel that you heard read from you this morning has all the components of a really compelling Netflix drama. It has sex, and it has murder, and it has dramatic revelations and confrontations. It's about King David, who you may have heard of. He's that lauded king of Israel. But at this time, it's about David who has slept with somebody else's wife, and he's gotten her pregnant, and he's arranged for her husband's murder, and then he's gotten caught. This story is about abuse. And it's about abuse from beginning to end. The story is also about suffering. It's about the suffering that happens when powerful people try to cover up abuse. But perhaps most of all, it's a story that shows the power of self-deception. That is, it shows how hard it is to recognize when we've done something wrong. If you were here last week, you know, or you may have heard in the first part of this lesson, that all of David's actions leading up to this moment of this particular episode, that all of his actions leading up to this moment of confrontation were a product of some sort of deception. The most dramatic being the moment when David sends Uriah the Hittite, the man whose wife he slept with, to the front lines of the battle, carrying a letter that contains Uriah's own death sentence. This is a pretty brutally clever move on the part of David. It seems perhaps that David has gotten very good at lying and deception while being the most powerful man in Israel. And his lies cost people's lives. But interestingly enough, he is not the only person who uses deception in this story. In the portion of 2 Samuel that we heard this morning, the prophet Nathan catches David in his lies with a very clever misdirection of his own. Notice the nice irony here. After David tricks Uriah to go into battle carrying the directions for his own murder, Nathan then tricks David into pronouncing his, that is David's, own death sentence. Nathan essentially tricks David into telling the truth that someone as merciless as David does deserve death. At God's bidding, Nathan's misdirection forces David into the light to see the terrible truth that he has failed. He has failed to be a good king. He has failed to protect his people. And in fact, his lies have caused them to suffer badly. Here, David finally sees that he is a sinner, and he does, therefore, deserve death.